In 1935, Ip Man is the most renowned and celebrated martial artist in Foshan Town, China. Once he is visited by a guy named Master Lao, who invites him over for a friendly duel in an attempt to learn from Ip Man's expertise before opening a martial arts club. Ip Man accepts the challenge, as well as Lao's request to keep it private. But as they begin the fight, a youngster named Yuan comes over to get his kite that is stuck in a nearby tree. He peeks into the house through the window and spots Lao being defeated by Ip Man. Yuan later narrates the fight to his friends gathered at his restaurant, co-owned by him and his brother Lin. Soon, Ip Man also arrives at the same restaurant for a meeting with his old friend Chuan. But at the same time, Lao's disciple tells him that Yuan told everyone about the fight. Angry to hear this, Lao rushes to the restaurant where Chuan is telling Ip Man about starting a cotton mill and offers him a partnership. But Ip Man declines, saying he has no interest in the business. Lao comes over and begins fighting with Yuan for ruining his reputation, but he also involves Ip Man in the argument. The situation gets more and more intense, but a police officer named Captain Lee, who has been overhearing everything, intervenes and mocks both sides for fighting over martial arts. He thinks that the skill is a thing of the past, and everyone uses guns now, but Ip Man instantly proves his superiority by knocking the gun out of his hands before asking everyone to leave. After things settle down, Ip Man returns to Chuan and realizes he's having financial difficulties. He lends him some money for his cotton mill. Before saying goodbye, Chuan requests him to teach his son martial arts. But Ip Man declines while advising him to consult with any Foshan martial arts club for this purpose. As they exchange goodbyes, Lin interrupts the conversation asking Ip Man to fight with him for practice, which he accepts. As he is always busy with his friends, the situation is unacceptable to his wife Chong, who feels he does not give proper attention to their son Chun. Frustrated, she yells at his friends, making everyone leave, and argues with him that he should spend more time with Chun instead of his pals. A few days later, a group of martial artists from out of town arrive in Foshan. Their leader, Jin, a kung fu expert, instantly starts beating different masters in a fight to prove his skill set because he wants to open a martial arts club in town. The following day, Ip Man spends time with his wife and child, trying to make things better. Lin shows up informing him about Jin and the group, who has scared everyone with his expertise in kung fu. Meanwhile, Jin fights with Master Lao this time, who gives him a tough competition, but gets knocked out and is defeated. After the fight, Jin and his friends brag about their skills by saying no one in Foshan can stand against them, but a waiter disagrees, revealing they haven't encountered the best yet. After learning about Ip Man, Jin's group pays him a visit at his house and challenges him to a duel. As Ip Man does not want to fight due to his latest argument with Chong, he politely declines, but Jin thinks he's a coward who cannot beat him. Jin also teases him about complying with his wife's orders, which angers Chong, and she urges Ip Man to accept his challenge to teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, Officer Lee and his teammates also come over and request Ip Man to protect their honor against out-of-towners. At Ip Man's request, Lee also asks everyone to leave so he can have enough room to fight with Jin. At the beginning of the fight, Ip Man does not attack Jin at all, and only defends himself. But after Chun encourages him to go ahead, he instantly gets a lead over Jin. Seeing this, Jin's friend hand him over a blade, but it cannot stop Ip Man, who is in his full form, and soon wins the fight after rendering Jin's every move useless. As Jin walks out of the house after accepting his defeat, people cheer for Ip Man, while asking Jin to leave their town. Everyone then gathers around Ip Man to congratulate him for winning the fight and redeeming the honor of their martial arts clubs. The celebrations extend until the very next day, when Ip Man receives a lot of love from people who consider it an honor to serve him. Ip Man continues to enjoy these privileges until 1937, when things take a drastic turn after the Japanese army invades China, making people's lives miserable. As Foshan is also occupied, Ip Man becomes homeless and is forced to do laborious jobs to make a living for his family. The situation only gets worse with time as they soon run short of food, and he barely gets any rice after selling his precious watch and fighting with other starving citizens. On his way back home, he comes across Chuan, who takes him to his cotton mill, which is still functioning in these difficult times. As they roam around the mill, Chuan reveals that he's not in any position to pay off Ip Man's debt, so he offers to make him a shareholder in his factory as an alternative, which Ip Man hesitantly accepts. Chuan's son Yao also joins the conversation by welcoming Ip Man to the factory, as he thinks it will give him a chance to watch him practice and learn from him. After a while, Chong gets sick by constantly worrying about their present condition, which does not seem to be changing anytime soon. As she expresses her concerns, Ip Man assures her that he can take care of his family and decides to look for a job. Chong is surprised to hear this because he's never worked for anyone, but Ip Man tells her that things have changed now and he'll do his best to cope with the situation. The following day, he begins his job search and gets hired at a coal scrapping factory after the owner recognizes him. At work, Ip meets Lin, who tells him that there are many martial arts masters who are forced to work in the factory to meet their basic needs, although the job is a bit difficult for him. Ip gives his best while Lin continues to help as much as he can. One day while having lunch, Lin tells him that he hasn't heard from Yuan in days and does not even know if he's alive. Lin also shares that he regrets not being a supportive brother to Yuan and wants to say sorry if he gets a chance. While talking to him, Lin starts searching for his iron box, but the Japanese army raids the factory, creating chaos as workers start running for their lives. Officer Lee, who is now working as an interpreter for the Japanese army, addresses workers, telling them that Colonel Sato admires martial arts and wants some Chinese kung fu experts to have a duel with him. Initially, no one accepts, but as Lee tells them that they'll be getting a sack of rice in exchange, many martial artists, including Lin, agree to go with them. Upon arriving there, Lin learns that the Japanese officer General Miura beats up the masters and only offers a small bag of rice as a reward. After the fight, General Miura challenges martial artists, saying he'll prove Japanese kung fu supremacy over the Chinese. On his orders, Lee invites 3 of them to fight with him and announces that they'll be getting the reward irrespective of the results. Lin and 2 others accept the challenge, and although the others get knocked out, Lin is not ready to give up. He keeps on fighting back until he's beaten to death. The next day, Ip spots Lin's iron box in the coal and keeps it, hoping to return it to him. When Lee comes over again, Ip asks him about Lin's whereabouts, but he denies knowing anything about it, and again invites others to fight with General Miura. But Ip realizes that they must have done something to Lin. Furious after knowing about Lin's fate, Ip Man agrees to go fight with the Japanese soldiers. As they arrive there, he gets further frustrated when a Chinese gets shot by Colonel Sato and drops dead on his bag of rice. Angry with Sato's barbaric actions, General Miura scolds him and threatens him not to do it again because he wants to win a fair fight against the Chinese kung fu experts. Colonel Sato intends to arrange another tournament for General Miura, and Ip aggressively accepts the challenge by saying he wants to fight against 10 men at once. Although surprised, General Miura agrees to send 10 fighters into the ring. Enraged about Lin, Ip instantly knocks all of them down within a few minutes. He is offered 10 sacks of rice as a reward, but he refuses to take it and only picks up the bloodied sack of the Chinese fighter who died earlier. After Ip Man hands over the sack to the guy's grieving family, Lee advises him to be careful by saying that they're not aware of General Miura's intentions toward him. Already angry with him for being a Japanese interpreter, Ip Man slaps him in the face, calling him a traitor, but Lee argues with him, saying he's only doing it to make a living for his family. Upon returning home, as Chong treats his bruises, Ip expresses his disappointment, saying he feels useless as he cannot do anything for his fellow countrymen who die at the hands of Japanese soldiers every day. As people continue to starve, Jin and his fellows attack supply trucks before raiding Chuan's cotton mill, and threatens to confiscate his goods if they do not pay their required amount of money. Chuan, already going through a financial crisis due to war, tries to explain his situation, but they beat him up, as well as Yao, for not complying with their orders. Yao rushes to inform Ip about the incident and brings him over to the mill, but Jin has already left after ordering them to arrange money. Depressed to see his father like this, Yao begs Ip to teach them martial arts so they can defend themselves against Jin. Although reluctant, Ip agrees after the workers also insist on him being their master. The next day, as Ip begins their training, everyone, including men, women, and children, participate with enthusiasm and keep practicing while working at the mill. Meanwhile, General Miura questions Lee about Ip, as he wants another fight with him. Concerned about Ip's safety, Lee denies knowing his location, but gets beaten up by the Japanese soldiers. After being forced by them, Lee unwillingly brings Colonel Sato and a few others to Ip's house, but as the soldiers intend to tease Chong, Ip gets angry and beats them all. Although he manages to get rid of them, Lee advises that they must leave the house, as General Miura might send others, and helps them relocate. Lee is once again beaten by them, but he does not reveal anything about Ip, who is currently taking refuge at his house. As Lee tries his best to make his family comfortable, Ip apologizes for his earlier behavior and thanks him for his favor. After a while, Ip tells Chong that they'll be leaving Foshan, knowing as Chuan is making arrangements for them, and she assures him of her support in every decision. Jin and the crew visit the factory again, but this time workers fight against them to protect themselves. Seeing Ip standing with them, Jin learns that they've found a master in him and argues with him for coming into his way again, as he was the one who stopped him from opening the martial arts club in Foshan. Jin also reveals he was doing it after being unable to get anything to eat, and accuses Ip responsible for his miseries. Furious, Jin urges his fellows to attack them. Ip alone proves to be enough for them, but he does not touch Uwan, who has joined hands with the rebels. After Jin leaves, Ip scolds Uwan for robbing his fellow man. He also gives him Lin's iron box after revealing that he was beaten to death by the Japanese. Although Uwan was angry with Lin for not taking care of him, he learns about Lin's love for him after finding his kite in the iron box and cries for his brother. The same night, Lee secretly comes home and advises Ip not to visit the cotton mill again, because General Miura has found out about it. The next morning, Japanese soldiers led by Colonel Sato raid the factory and start beating the workers while asking about Ip. Despite Lee's warning, Ip rushes to the mill to save innocent workers, where the colonel intends to shoot him, but is stopped by General Miura, who still wants to fight. Lee then translates Miura's words, telling Ip that they already want him dead for resisting the Japanese army, but he offers to spare his life if he he accepts to teach kung fu to Japanese soldiers. Enraged with their terrorizing activities, Ip refuses to accept the offer and challenges Miura to a duel. On his orders, the soldiers take Ip with them while he requests Chuan to take his family to a safe place. At the headquarters, Sato tries to stop Miura from a fight, fearing he might lose, but Miura disagrees, saying it will be equal to accepting the defeat, as he is sure he can win against Ip. Miura wants to give him a fair chance, so he gives the best food to Ip in imprisonment, but he refuses to eat anything. Meanwhile, Chuan takes care of his family and takes them with him despite Chong's disapproval, who does not want to leave her husband behind. As everyone gathers to witness the fight, Chong begs Chuan to let her go to Ip, as she regrets not supporting his martial arts practice, and she does not want to repeat the same mistake, thinking this could be his last fight. Before the start, Miura announces he wants a fair tournament and a friendly fight in order to improve Sino-Japanese relations, but no one believes his claims, as most Chinese think he'll ultimately kill Yip. While walking to the ring, Yip remembers his last meeting with Colonel Sato, who warned him not to win against Miura and threatens to kill him if he doesn't comply. Lee also advises him to accept Miura's offer, but Yip thinks that the Japanese soldiers don't deserve to learn Chinese kung fu because of the havoc they created in this country. While taking their positions, Yip spots Uwan as well as Chong and Chuan in the crowd cheering for him. After an intensive fight, Yip defeats Miura and gets shot by the Colonel Sato, who refuses to accept the results. This unjust move makes people furious as they break every hurdle to rush to their master, while Lee shoots him down before joining the crowd gathering around him. The postscripts tell us that the war ended in 1945 when the Japanese emperor announced to surrender unconditionally. A few years later, the Grand Master Ip moves to Hong Kong with his family, where he devoted the rest of his life to teaching kung fu to his aspiring students. His millions of disciples are spread across the globe and include the famous action movie star Master Bruce Lee. If you enjoyed that recap, I got a good feeling that you'll like this one too. Click on the video on your screen for more.